right, good morning, everyone. My name is Jackie the Dogwolf, your hostess of the Hours of the Dogwolf, spinning psychobilly and rockabilly for 2 straight hours every Thursday. And today we have a very special guest. We have with us Landon of the Screamin Sins. Would you like to say hello?
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me. Great show.
Very excited to have you, for sure. So you guys have a new EP out. Would you like to share a little bit about what the title is, like kind of what went into making it?
Yeah, so this is our second EP. We released the first one called Haven for the Damned in July 2024. And so this is a follow-up to that. So originally we conceived of it actually as one album, but we liked the EP format a lot. So we decided to release two EPs, and we think of them as sister EPs. So eventually we will actually release them as one vinyl record. So anyway, the follow-up is called Living Nightmares, and it's a 6-song EP. We just released it, I guess, a couple of weeks ago, and really excited about it.
So going into it, because I mean, you said that they were sister EPs, was there anything different about the recording process this time around, rather than the first time around?
No, the guy that produced it, he's an excellent producer, is an old friend of mine. We've recorded many times together. So we wanted to keep it as close as possible to the original sound because we thought we'd really hit on something really special on the first EP. So we wanted to keep a really consistent sound, and I think we achieved that. At the same time, we wanted to evolve the sound. We wanted them to be a cohesive kind of unit, you know?
And the art direction too, as cover art goes, those are pretty crisp cover art. Do you have any comments on that? Who did that? What was the direction for it?
So our singer Paul is a graphic design guy, and so we do have a lot of superpowers within the band, and that is one of them. He's an excellent graphic designer. So he does all of the graphic work, the artwork, all of our designs and everything. And again, we try to be really thoughtful about our approach and how we put ourselves out there. The imagery and the art is all part of that. So we're very particular about that, and we like to have a consistent look. So the artwork from the first EP to the second EP, there's a color palette and there's a consistency to it, which we're very conscious of.
And so with that conscious kind of direction, I know that in the kind of write-up that you guys sent with your new EP, that you guys preferred to just be called rock and roll and not be put in any kind of box. What was the reasoning behind that? Was it just trouble finding a niche, or was it just kind of trying to expand your audience a little bit?
Well, we're trying to find the community. We exist on the periphery of psychobilly and horror punk, and there's a lot of crossover within those genres, but there's all these little offshoots, gothabilly and hellbilly and all sorts of billy variations. At the end of the day, it's all rooted in rock and roll, So we love the little communities, we love the little niche genres and things, but we often get I've heard people say, oh, these guys aren't horror punk. And I think, well, why? Because we don't sound exactly like the Misfits in 1977 or whatever. And then we get the same from the other side. Some people say, oh, well, they're not really true psychobilly. And then it's okay, well, yeah, we don't have, quiffs this tall, and we don't have this stand-up bass player. So, at the end of the day, it's just rock and roll. It's punk. It's the attitude. It's the ethic. At some point, music has to move and evolve. So I think we take what influences us, and then we put it in the blender of our own consciousness, and then we express it in our art form, which I would hope is unique, because we don't want to sound like the Misfits. We don't want to sound exactly like these molds that people might have in their minds. So we do things the way that we intuitively feel that they should be done. And a great song is a great song at the end of the day, in my opinion.
No, I totally agree. And for frequent listeners of my show, I hope that they see how everything kind of gets mixed together, in the blender, like you said, where it's I feel psychobilly and horror punk and everything now kind of has to come together a little bit more. You know what I mean? And I feel like you guys have found like a really good way of unifying those influences. And
And I
like
think there's
speaking,
something in there for everybody too. And
yeah.
we also like the EP format. A lot of bands are releasing singles, and singles are great and they work for the algorithms and the Spotify's and things. But I like to have a tapestry, a landscape of music, to have a collection of songs that fit together to get a broader sense of what the offering is all about. I think is really important to me. But if you listen, there's a song for everybody, especially on the new one. We have some really good horror punk-ish songs. One called "Hills Have Eyes," "The Living Dead," and there's some distinctly psychobilly ones too. There's one called "Love You to Death." It's very much a rockabilly, psychobilly tune. And there's even a song on there that is kind of a swampy blues type song. And I remember when Paul first demoed that and sent it to us, I thought in my mind, my first initial reaction was like, geez, that's not really psychobilly or horror punk. And I was thinking about these genres, and then I had to kind of check myself, because I thought, well, but it's a great song, and I
Hmm.
just had to focus really on the quality of the song and just play exactly what that song needed and just allow it to be as it was. And it turns out that that's actually that's one of the songs that really catches people's attention out of any of the songs on the new album. I think it's the most streamed one at this point right now, and it's
Hmm.
very much the most unique one as well.
And so like you mentioned like the writing process, like is that pretty like spread out between the three of you, or is that kind of like one person doing a lot of the writing and then like embellishing over it with the rest of the band?
So we're just a three-piece band: drums, bass, guitar.
Hmm.
Paul is the singer and the songwriter for the most part. And I will say, as a drummer, it's a little bit, the drummers don't always get the songwriting credits. The credits usually go to the person who writes the lyrics and the melody. Me, as a drummer, I love writing music. And what I try to think of is like, the transitions, the feels, how does it put together? It's kind of like a puzzle that comes together. But as far as lyrics and melody, Paul writes the majority of things. We try to get a sort of batch of things and then do a really intensive kind of writing, recording period. But everybody contributes to it in their own unique way, for sure.
So was a lot of like the demoing and then going into the studio, was that a fairly quick process, or that did that take like a lot of time to develop, you know?
In both cases, it's been very, very quick. So Screamin Sins, a little bit of a backup story. They've been a band for quite a while, and I just joined the band. They had a couple of drummers, and there wasn't quite the right fit for the sound, I don't think. And so when I came in, I feel like we hit on something. It really solidified. We just had this burst of creative energy. It just felt like the puzzle pieces finally came together, and there was just a massive outflow, and it's been very, very productive. So the first record, they were sitting on a lot of material, and I got really excited about it because I just saw this potential. And so the first record really, really came together quickly. Just within a couple of months, we had all the songs, so we went right into the studio. And then the same for the second record. Didn't take us that long at all either. When we were ready and we felt like we were ready to do the next one, we went right into it and it came together. And I will say I've been a part of a lot of songwriting, and often the best songs are the ones that come the quickest,
Yeah, for
just
sure.
seem to flow out of you, which is beautiful.
Hmm. Like a melody just catches or something, you know? I totally get
Yeah.
that. And I think
Hmm.
it's really like audible on the record, like how much you guys like, even though you guys have kind of got it like done quickly, like you guys are together and really, really tight. Was that like a process of like doing multiple takes, or was that just like you guys are just on it all the time, you know? Like obviously no band's like perfect, but
Yeah, we're really serious about what we're doing. And when we go into the studio, we work very efficiently and very focused. We're not, having a drink or a smoke or a whatever in the studio. We're quite serious when we go in. And we have a pattern now, and I've worked with this particular producer. His name's Terry Ben. Him and I have worked together a lot over the years, so we've developed a really efficient way of working, and we both work similarly. And so essentially we just did both of them over the weekend. I go in, I sneak in on Friday night, we get the drums tuned, we get everything dialed in so that when we come in first thing Saturday morning, 10 o'clock, we really just plug in and go. And Terry knows our sound so well that he's got a kind of a template that he can call up on his computer that sort of has all the sounds already kind of there. And so really when we go in, we can work quite quickly. And you don't want to rush the process, but there's a certain magic that exists there that you want to hit on. So for me personally, I don't like to do more than, I will never do more than 5 takes. If you don't have it in 5 takes, move on and come back to it. The sweet spot is always about the second or third take. And then once I know I have it, then I like to do one more take, just because you never know. And so it happens very, very quickly. And I like that. And then you can spend more time on the mixing and mastering process. And, we do some sampling and things like that. But, the studio is not the time you should be tweaking and writing or changing. All that should happen in the rehearsal room, and it should be 100% ready to go before you set foot in that studio. And for me, even like right down to the beats per minute, as a drummer, I have them all mapped out. That's not something that I'm thinking about. I already have that all in my notes. So I'm a little tedious and obsessive, but it's my art, it's our art, and we like to put our best foot forward.
And you mentioned like the samples, and you have some really, really interesting samples in there. Does like your sample content and also like the things that you sing about, like do those reflect like kind of like horror-based influences that you guys have like as a band?
Well, I've always loved sampling in music. I think it's just a part of the art that can really bring some life to it. I think it's very interesting. I always push for it. I like samples. I like to blend them in. It's the sort of horror punk. You got those themes in there, so why not kind of embellish those themes with some vibes? I just kind of scour the internet for, weird old public domain kind of horror movies and things. And it's really just a process of you have to develop an ear for that sort of thing. And I will say the new album, Paul definitely had a concept. I wouldn't specifically describe it as a concept album, but he did have a concept going through it. And I tried to match up the samples, with the lyrics and with the general vibe. And it's one of those things, it's you hear it or you don't. It either clicks for me and I know that it's perfect, or it's not at all. So I don't just try to take a sample and just shove it into something because I think in my mind that there should be a sample there. It really has to work within the context of the song and also the context of the album, because I care about how the songs flow together. It's a bit like a really good set list. You got to come out strong and it should have some ebbs and flows. The album is kind of like that. And that's one of the things I think is a little bit lost in the modern day of streaming, is you don't get the full context of the record. So I might encourage your listeners to perhaps give the album a spin at some point on their stream platform of choice. But listen to the whole thing and see how the songs fit together and see how it presents as a tapestry. And I think the samples play into that. And there was the last song on the record's called Curse on You, and it's this witchy, swampy voodoo tale. And I found this perfect sample. Sometimes I think the sample should sit before and then the song should start, but this particular intro blends in with the sample. And that was just something that happened by accident. I had my computer programs open, and I had the track, and then I had the sample, and it was just the way that I actually put it into the program. When it landed in the program, it had overlaid over the track, and when I listened to it, it sounded perfect to me. And there's a little sound in there that actually lines up perfectly with the first bass drum hit. And to me, I just thought it was a kind of an omen, and that it was just, okay, that's the way that it should be. And I kind of fluked out. So there's a cool blend of the sample, but there's a sample at the start and the finish too. And it really adds to the overall vibe of the track. And it's very much a vibey track.
And like you said, like the best songs are sometimes the things that catch. And it's like sometimes those happy accidents that catch like really texture the track. Like I was listening to the album today in preparation, and like you really feel like, yeah, okay, this is leading up to something really, really cool, you know? Like, and I think that's like, I don't know, I was just like really, really happy to hear like super cool samples in like songs, because I feel like, and I'm not sure if you feel the same way, where it's like sometimes horror punk or even psychobilly kind of refuses to like have those nods to like horror movies directly, and rather kind of like focuses more on lyrical content. Personally, I was blown away with the record. Like I listened to your first one a good minute ago, and so when you reached out, I was super excited. So how did you kind of present this like to your scene? Like how is your scene there, and how did they kind of react to the new material?
Well, the intro track on the record is called The Hills Have Eyes, and that's actually a really quite an older song. The majority of the record is all new stuff, but that was actually an older song, and we knew we wanted to have 6 songs to match it, and we had 5 really good tracks, and I just thought, let's take that old one. And it was something that a lot of people had asked about. Like, it was a standout track that people had heard before in the past, but it was never properly recorded. And it was just kind of the missing piece that I thought would really tie the record together. It's not the title track, but it's the first track on the album. So that was an older track. So that was based on my gut feeling. I just thought it was a really great song, and it deserved to be presented in a new way and properly recorded. And it really turned out really, really good. I'm very happy. So then a lot of our, older fan base were also happy to hear that song, that particular song, The Hills Have Eyes, re-recorded. But I think in general, psychobilly, horror punk, these niche kind of genres, we love our local community here, but I think of our music and the music of psychobilly as a worldwide thing, and the beauty, like we're connecting right now, you're in Cleveland, I'm in Kingston, Ontario. That's the beautiful thing about right now. So if you're in a niche genre, it's a nice time, but think big. Like there's an amazing community of guys like in the UK, and just this morning somebody bought some merch and some stuff like in France and Germany, and I love that. So we put our music out there thinking in more of a broad, worldly kind of way, not necessarily just in our small community here. So
yeah, and I mean, it's very interesting to kind of think that way. And I always like try to remind my like listeners that like this is an international thing. Like psychobilly and rockabilly and horror punk is all over the world. And the interesting thing about like our connection is that we met on the internet of all places. How do you kind of feel about like interacting with online communities, and how that kind of helps support your music?
I love it. It's where it's at for us, and especially in these niche communities, you have to find the people, and they're spaced out all over the place. And psychobilly definitely has its history in different parts of the world too. It's very much a lot in the UK, and it's always been big in Germany and places in Europe and in the United States too. But there is actually significant psychobilly history and scene in Canada, very close to us too, like the Matadors, the Creep Show, the Gutter Demons, the Brains. All these bands we're all within, 3 hours from each other.
Hmm.
And so there's a real history there, and I'm thinking a lot about that and trying to, really promote that too. That Canada has its place in psychobilly worldwide, and there's some significant bands. So it's nice. The community is there, but yeah, it's also worldwide too.
And in kind of like letting that community know, I don't know if you've observed it, but how do you feel about like almost the downsizing of people that are really into the genre? Like kind of like post 2010s, like boom. You know what I mean? Like how are you kind of managing with like kind of I don't want to say a diminishing audience, but like a diminishing like passion for like people into psychobilly.
Well, I think these things go through ups and downs, naturally as any scene does, and you never know what's going to come back and have a resurgence too. Like all the basics are still the same. Write great songs, release great music. That's always the fundamentals. It's always the basics of it, Write great music, put it out there. A great song should transcend any time or genre, or, whatever. Great music is great music. It doesn't really matter what you call it or whether the scene's in or in vogue or not. And also these things come and go. Like I'm amazed right now at, there's this huge kind of goth resurgence. There's all these people getting into all this goth music from the 80s and stuff. And
Hmm.
I think it's really cool that people rediscover those cultural niches, And I don't
Hmm.
think psychobilly will ever die or go anywhere. It's gonna evolve. Someday we might be a part of a resurgence, 10 years from now or 20 years from now. You don't know. So the only
Hmm.
thing that you can do is just do your best to put out the best quality material and art that you can put out, and that's really what we try to do.
And so, just kind of one final question before we kind of get a sample of your EP, which I'm very excited to share a little more of. Do you guys kind of subscribe like the all music is good music mentality where it's like because you guys have so many like genres, do you like prefer to play with like a mixed bill or do you prefer to kind of keep it within your niches? Like how do you operate within that, you know?
Yeah, it's a little tricky, I guess. I guess in the broad sense, it's punk music and it's ethic and it's DIY and it's quality. Essentially, psychobilly is a cross between rockabilly and punk rock music. It's rockabilly music, but with the punk kind of attitude and
Yeah.
ethos, right? So that's kind of the overarching thing. So again, I guess that's one you could look at it as a disadvantage. We look at it as an advantage that we exist on the outskirts of a lot of genres because we can play a psychobilly thing, we can play a punk show, we can kind of slide in there because we don't fit in exactly. Like we got a show coming up and it's a bunch of, kind of rockabilly and surf bands and stuff like that. And it all works together, so we actually look at it as an advantage.
Hmm. And
Mhm.
so, without further ado, hearing some of that advantage, hear a little bit of a taste of Living Nightmares, the new EP by the Screaming Sins. Here
Let's do it.
is The Hills Have Eyes.